Okay, one last time on, good morning class. Good morning. Okay, one last time on brains in a vat, and then we sweep triumphantly on to Breccia on to Breccia. I forget the name of the paper, but there's only one by Breccia. Misrepresentation, that's the name of the paper, okay. And in the Breccia and photo papers that we're doing next, you'll see that really what they are doing is they are amping up the causal theory to absolutely full generality. They are trying to get a theory that will apply to any kind of representation, whatever stated in causal terms. But today, one last time on brains in a vat. Really what I want to do in this last session, and last time too actually, is just try and get a good focus on what Putnam's argument actually is. As I said, I think there is a real insight in Putnam's argument, whatever specific criticisms you have of it, there's a real insight there, which is something about the way in which the mind and the world, the mind is constituted by the world on a causal theory of representation, in such a way that it's difficult to see how there can be global error by the mind about the world. There's some insight there that I think is not going to go away. But last time I was saying, well, there are limits on this kind of argument. It doesn't seem like it's going to work very well as to see off scepticism about other minds. If you wonder whether you really know what anyone else is experiencing, the argument is going to have limits there. And the argument also seems very threatening to the ordinary picture we usually have about our knowledge of our own minds. So what I want to do with these arguments is not so much to knock over what Putnam is saying, but to get more and more of a fix on what the argument actually does achieve. And incidentally, since this is the last session on Putnam, and I assume many of you guys will be thinking about this, feel free to free associate a little bit in questions if you see what I mean. It doesn't have to be exactly what I just said. If you've got some way of showing that Putnam's wrong, then please feel free to air it in questions. Okay. So I want to start out by asking, here's a slightly different way of thinking about a problem with Putnam's argument. You can say, well, instead of saying, as I was asking last time, has he really refuted the skeptic? You can look at his analysis of what kind of knowledge it is that he's trying to say that we really do have of the world and say, is that it? Do we really have as little knowledge of our environment as Putnam is supposing? I think there's some sense in which it's a very minimal conception of knowledge of the environment that he's working with. Putnam says, look, the brain in the, suppose that the world is the way you and I usually think it is, and suppose that Putnam's right about the brain in the vat having knowledge of what's going on in its environment, then Putnam says, well, the brain's no worse off than us, but it's a natural reaction, I think, to say, well, the insight the brain in the vat has into what's going on, there's some sense in which that's pretty minimal, right? There's some sense in which you want to say it's not the first idea of what is going on. And Putnam's really only getting us that we are in that same position. And there's some sense in which the brain doesn't know what it's like out there, and we usually think we do know what it's like out there. And take, for example, colour terms. If you think about the way the brain in the vat is using red and green and blue and so on, I mean, all that's there is a kind of grey-coloured sludge, right? And the vat, let us suppose, is of a uniformly monochrome or an interesting colour. So the brain thinks it's confronted by a blaze of colours the whole time. So, but there obviously is no colour in the relevant sense in its environment. So does the brain in the vat have knowledge of the colours of the things around it? And does it know what the colour terms refer to? And are we in that position? Is that the same as us? We don't have any knowledge of what the colour terms refer to. We don't know what the colours are of the objects out there. And you might say, well, actually, what physics shows is that our situation is pretty much that of the brain in the vat. And what physics shows is that, just as for the brain, it has no real idea of what's actually going on. You might say, well, physics shows that here, this space-time zone, if we could but see it as physics describes it, it's just this world of alien quantum mechanical forces. No people, no colours, just these alien forces. Populations of atoms floating meaninglessly in the void. That's all that's really going on. And our usual experience doesn't give us any insight into that at all. So it's actually for us pretty much as it is with the brain in the vat. All our experience can be providing with you is some kind of navigational clues as to how this collection of atoms should try and negotiate all these forces out there. But like the brain, we don't really have any understanding beyond that. Now, I don't think that is an encouraging thought. Right? I find that a pretty, I don't know, maybe you guys are, maybe there's a generation thing here. Maybe you guys are all adjusted to this picture. But it seems to me actually, in practice, impossible to live with that kind of picture of your relation to your surroundings. In practice, when you're interacting with other people, when you're making your plans for the day, it's simply impossible to try and think directly of the way the world really is. You just take it for granted that the objects have the colours you think they do, that the other people and so on are really there. The picture that you're getting from Putnam is something like, all your conscious life provides you with is a kind of phosphorescence. There's a collection of atoms here, there's a collection of atoms out there. I get these kind of phosphorescent shimmers of sensation that do have their reliable environmental causes. There really are patterns of wavelength reflectance and so on, causing these shimmering phosphorescences, and in that sense they represent the shimmering phosphorescences. These shimmering phosphorescences. You know what I mean? You can read it, right? These experiences they're really minimally helpful in that they give you some guidance to how to get around, and they represent these patterns of wavelength reflectance and so on. But that's all that's going on. And Russell's picture of what acquaintance was that there's some notion of our cognitive contact with our surroundings that is giving us something better than that. It's providing us with knowledge of what the world is like. It's not just that we have signs that are reliably caused by some external phenomenon out there or other. It's that you have some insight into what is going on out there from experience. And it's true that physics may be describing the world, as we say, at one level, but there is another level, the common sense level of description of the ordinary mind-independent world that is perfectly real too, and your ordinary experience is giving you some insight into what is going on at that level. So in Putnam's, on Russell's picture, it would be possible to say we have acquaintance with the ordinary medium-sized world. On Russell's conception of acquaintance, we could extend it beyond sense state to say we do have acquaintance with the ordinary medium-sized world, with the objects and properties. But Putnam isn't trying to get us that. All Putnam is giving us is that, one way or another, we are causally connected to some kind of external patterns or other out there. And it could be practically anything that is going on out there, but we have these in our internal life, we have these reliable signs of it. But I think, that's what I mean, it's a pretty minimal conception of our knowledge of our surroundings that Putnam is getting us. Okay, so that's the line of criticism I want to try and push a little bit. Does that make sense? Can you hear music in the distance? Yes. Okay. Just okay. Okay, you comfortable with that? Okay. Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, so what I want to do now is just go back over a little bit, review a little bit how you can think of the causal theory of reference as an explanation of Russell's notion of acquaintance. So remember, Russell said, we'll say we have acquaintance with anything of which we're directly aware without the intermediary of any process of inference or any knowledge of truth. So when you encounter a person, you encounter a sense datum, you encounter a colour, then without the intermediary of any inference or knowledge of truth, you know what that thing is. That was the idea. So acquaintance is supposed to be more primitive than knowledge of truths. You can know lots of truths about the colour red, but no amount of finding out truths about the colour red is going to give you knowledge of what the thing is, what redness is. Knowledge of what redness is something you get from a direct sensory encounter with something red. It's more primitive than any knowledge of truths about the colour. But when we look at how the causal theory goes, it's natural to say, well, I said when we were talking about Evans, you should think about the relation between the thing out there, whatever it is, your causal connection to the referring term. And I said, well, one way of understanding why causation is the right notion here is that causation matters for knowledge. What you need is the kind of causation that's going to give you knowledge of the thing, so that when you're in a position to refer to something, you can then go on and transmit knowledge of the thing. So just spelling that out a little bit, what exactly is the thing causing? It's not just your use of the term, it's that you have associated with the term some kind of dossier of information about the object. Right? That's what we draw from Searle and Kripke. What's being caused by the thing is the use of a collection of information, and in Evans's terms, you want the thing to be the dominant source of that collection of information. So what's a dossier? How do you explain what a dossier is? Well, here's a way of being just very precise about what a dossier is. Remember this kind of inference, B is F, A is G, B is both F and G. Is that inference valid or invalid? Invalid, all right. The right answer is invalid. Right, it needs an extra premise. Yes? Is this inference, so yeah, there you are. Now, is this inference valid or invalid? Valid, that's the right answer, okay. So you could say that what a dossier is, suppose you call this kind of inference one where you trade on identity. Does that make sense? You're just using the identity of the thing, you don't have to make it explicit, you just make the inference using the identity. You can say a dossier, the thing that's being caused here is a collection of propositions, all relating to the same object, such so you've got B as F, you've got B as G, and so on. You've got a whole bunch of propositions like that, where in inference you can freely reason back and forth, trading in the identity of the object referred to. So that's what a dossier is. If you've got something A as F, that would be outside the dossier, because you can trade back and forth with it. Okay, then we can say acquaintance with an object is when you know the propositions in a dossier relating to the object. And when Russell says knowledge of things is more basic than knowledge of truths, logically independent of knowledge of truths, well, what we've got here is knowledge of a whole bunch of truths, B is F, B is G, and so on. That's all the stuff that's in the dossier, knowledge of truths. And then there's that causal connection with the thing that means that that's what's making the case that all this really is knowledge of the thing. And what's happening is that the object out there is causing your acceptance of all these propositions, B is F, B is G, B is H, and so on. And then you can trade backwards and forwards, reasoning about the thing there. So I think that would probably be, at the moment, the commonest philosophical picture of reference. Is that right? GSIs? Is that? I'm not trying to be original here. I'm trying to catch what I think is most philosophers' default kind of picture of reference. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Uncharacteristic agreement. Right. Okay. So that I think is the usual picture of reference, and I think Putnam is probably working with something like that picture in mind. But notice that the thing about this is, the only real knowledge you're getting of the object is the propositional knowledge in the dossier. The causal link there, how should I say, is just instrumental. It's just something or other that generates all the propositions in the dossier in a reasonable way. So what is happening here is that the causal link doesn't constitute knowledge in its own right. That causal link isn't the knowledge, it's not the causal link itself that constitutes your knowledge of B. It's all these propositions you're getting that constitute your knowledge of B. You see what I mean? The cause is just what made them all happen, and made them all happen in a reliable way. The causal link itself is not some way of getting knowledge of B. But that's a picture then on which the propositional knowledge, the knowledge that things are so, is really the basic kind of knowledge. And this thing, this link, this causal link, this more primitive, is not itself a kind of knowledge of the world. That's the kind of picture that Putnam has of what's going on with the brain in the vat, or indeed of you or me. There's all this stuff out there. It generates all this propositional knowledge in you or me. It's just a causal link. And there's no more to it than that. So the causal link only matters because it's instrumental in bringing about propositional knowledge. But that wasn't Russell's picture originally. Russell thought that consciousness has something to do with it. It's the fact that you're having experience of the world that's really important here. He said the definition was, remember, we shall say that we have acquaintance with anything of which we are directly aware without the intermediary of any process of inference or any knowledge of truth. So the idea there is not that there's just some causal connection between some unknown stuff out there that is reliably producing beliefs in a bunch of propositions in you. The idea is that you're experiencing things and properties, people, colours, and sounds and so on, and you're getting a kind of immediate knowledge of them that you couldn't have without the experience. So remember Locke's picture of how you have, what your concept of the colours comes to. Your idea was your concept of the colours is just this, that you get some kind of sensation of redness, there's some texture out there causing it, some surface spectral reflectance characteristic out there causing it, and if different people have different ideas of redness, well, that just doesn't matter, because all your experiences are things that are reliably caused by something or other, some physical phenomenon out there. So your experience isn't giving you any insight into the nature of the property out there. Your experience is just something that functions like a flag, that unknown thing out there really is there. That's why it doesn't matter whether your experience is the same as mine or not. Because if we thought that our experiences are giving us some insight into what's out there, then one of us would be right and the other one would be wrong. And it really would matter whether your spectrum was an inversion of mine. So the implication of Locke's view here is that colour experience doesn't give you any insight into the nature of the colours, the properties of the objects out there. That's why spectrum inversion wouldn't matter. The alternative picture, though, is what Russell said. I know the colour perfectly and completely when I see it. I know further knowledge of it in itself is even theoretically possible. So when you encounter, the world can be described at many levels. You can describe it at the level of basic physics, or you can describe these characteristics of the object at the level of common sense. When you say things are colours, there are people, and there is coffee, all that kind of thing. Then that relation is not just a causal connection. It's you experiencing the thing. The thing is out there for you to experience, and your experience gives you knowledge of it. But that's more than just some causal connection to something unknown. G.E. Moore had that kind of picture of what's going on in experience. Moore said there are in every sensation two distinct terms: consciousness in respect of which all sensations are alike, and something else in respect of which one sensation differs from another. And we discussed this earlier, actually, that there is this picture on which what's going on in your experience of the world is that the colours, the people, the tables, the chairs, the ordinary medium-sized world, just as you think it is, commonsensically, that's all out there, independent of you. All the colours, all the tables, all the other people, they still exist, even if you don't experience them. So you could take away this relation of experience, and all that stuff would still be there, the medium-sized world. And what experience does is, it gives you knowledge of what those properties are. That non-propositional knowledge of what those properties are, just knowledge of what red is. That's the thing that Putnam doesn't seem to give us. Putnam just gives you, there's something going on out there, you have no idea what it is, but your uses of signs are reliably caused by that. When you build up a dossier, it's reliably caused by something or other out there. What we want, I think, though, commonsensically, is to know that what the world is like. The brain in the vat has no idea what its world is like, what its environment is like. But to me it seems absolutely basic to everyday life, that you take it for granted, that you know what the world is like, what other people are like, what the colours of objects are like, what the sounds and smells and tastes out there for you to encounter are like. And since the brain in the vat doesn't have that, we need to know if we're going to, if we're going to vindicate our ordinary picture of what's going on, then we need to know that we're not in just as bad a pitch position as the brain in the vat. Yep. Sure. Yeah. Well, you might think this is a bit pedantic, but I'm just trying to be fully explicit about what a dossier is. Right? So my definition of a dossier is it's a collection of propositions which are all linked in such a way that take any two propositions from the dossier. Yeah. So if you've got millions of propositions in here, then just take any two, take this one and this one at random, and then you can do one of these inferences that trade an identity.
So I'm just trying to make sure that the dossier, that's just one way of trying to make sure that the dossier is about the same thing.
That's right. It's just a way of saying this is manifestly or transparently all about the same thing. That's what a dossier is. Yeah. And I should say that part of what I'm trying to do here is just draw together lots of things that we've talked about in the last few weeks. Yeah. But I think I'll let you be fully explicit about what a dossier is, and then you can, when you give that definition in terms of reliable knowledge-generating causation, yeah, that I think is the usual picture that most philosophers now have, and I think it certainly fits with everything Putnam says. Yeah. And what I'm trying to bring out is what seems to me a limitation in this, that there's that kind of knowledge we think we have of our surroundings that isn't caught here. That doesn't seem wildly controversial. Are you all happy with that? You think that we are better off than the brain in the vat is, even if Putnam's right about the brain in the vat? Yes, that seems pretty plain. Yes? Okay. I don't think I can be explaining this correctly. Okay. The thing is, that, though, that if at this point, if we accept this kind of picture, then skepticism seems to be just as much of a threat as ever. The skeptical question was, are the causes of my experience what I take them to be? So last time I was talking about knowledge of other minds, or your knowledge of your own thoughts. Now I'm talking about your knowledge of the medium-sized world, the world you encounter in ordinary perception, which is really the home place, the natural place for Putnam's argument to work. So the question is, are the causes of my perceptual experiences what I take them to be? Now, if you have Locke's picture, on which it's just patterns of surface spectral reflectance, the causes of your experience aren't as you ordinarily take them to be. Locke himself thought common sense makes a mistake about the colours. We ordinarily take it that the objects outside us are coloured, but what science has shown is that there aren't really colours out there. Colour is just a characteristic of something in your mind. So that is a kind of skepticism. That is throwing away, saying we don't have knowledge where we thought we had knowledge. If it wasn't for science, you'd have thought, I know what the colours of objects are all right, but Locke's picture is, there's an error here. And the skeptic, or the guy who's pushing the brain in the vat hypothesis, can say that that's just a general picture. Everything is like the case of colour. We are always making a mistake about the characteristics or even the existence of medium-sized objects. Here's Locke. He's saying you can't get this idea out of people's heads. People continue to think that objects have colours. Men are highly to be brought to think that sweetness and whiteness are not really in manner. And these are not, and he's saying these are not really in manner. These are but the effects of the operations of manner by the motion, size, and figure of its particles on the eyes and palate. So he's saying there's this error that we just keep making. And what's going to turn out is that the whole medium-sized world, other people, your family, your friends, none of that's really out there. What's really out there are just the motion, size, and figure of particles producing sensations in you. The university, your GPA, none of that really exists. It's all just sensations being produced in you by the motion, size, and figure of particles.